Thank you so much for coming here today. And well, before we even get into the topic, I would like to thank DevConf for providing this platform, and especially the volunteers. You've done a great job organizing this whole event, so thank you. And who am I? I'm Faisal. I'm a software engineer at Red Hat, and well, you can see a Git way of getting to know me, but moving on from that, I want to first of all get a bit familiar with something. How many of you are maybe not proud of your Git history when you first started programming ever? I would be surprised if someone didn't. So I feel like it's a common experience that we all somehow share. And in my case, I would like to call that the Git log of shame. So this is actually me 3 years ago, or a bit more than that, when I first started. So this is how the history looked like. And believe me, there's like 58 more of those. You can't tell what's happening, you don't know what's going on, and yeah, that's why I call it the Git log of shame. So just thought to throw that out there. And now we can actually think about what kind of value could you extract from this, or what would I expect you to really put at the forefront. So definitely keep in mind, have a little reflection on how do you really structure your commits, and also think about whatever you're working on, whatever projects you're working on. What makes sense for them? Because not every structure will make sense to every project. And also to keep in mind what's there on the right. It's also a high-level view of what are you really doing. You're working, making some changes, you gather them, and then you label them with something, right? Which is the commit message, and then you publish it. So let's keep that paradigm in mind. So for the agenda, we will go ahead with understanding commits on a high level, because it's always good to take a step back and revisit what something is. And then we will take a look at some commit structure elements and some example, then some tools that could be helpful, or even resources, if I may. So, ground-up understanding of Git commits. I really like this GIF, however it's pronounced, because it kind of shows you that whenever you're doing changes, you kind of want to lump them up together, containerize them, if you will, and put a label on them. So basically, that's exactly what we're doing with Git commits, because you choose which files, which lines of code you actually want to group up together and write something about it and label it. So let's keep that in mind. Let's keep in mind that that's how commits actually are and how they should be. And so let's take a little look at the structure. You could structurize it however you want to, but I think these are the most foundational aspects of it. So you've got, of course, the commit title. So this is supposed to say what the code does. Not necessarily what you did, but what does this code enable? What does this change enable the code to do, or your application, or whatever it is? Ideally, to start with an uppercase imperative verb, but that's something. And then the reasoning, that's the most crucial one. That if I would want you to keep anything in mind from this, it's just this particular part. You have no idea how many people I spoke to about Git commit messages and how passionate and opinionated they get about this particular part, the reasoning. So if we have some more time towards the end, I might get a bit deeper into this, the reasoning part of it. But moving on, we've got the methodology. How was this change implemented? This is more of a, if it makes sense, add it. If the code is truly clear, that commit is truly clear, then you can actually think of it as optional. It all depends. If you're using some complex algorithm with some, I don't know what kind of formulas in the background, it might be worth it to explain how this was done. But if it's something much simpler, you can avoid that. And the last one, it's about line length. So just to keep in mind that not to have the title be an essay or basically all the description into one line. Right nowadays, these things are not really a problem with like GitHub, GitLab. It already does the line breaks, but why not do it? So we can take a look at an example. So for the commit title, for example, here, we have deleted SMS off method. Like, sure, you could put that as a title. You can understand that you deleted that. I can infer a lot of things about what happened there. But a better way is to kind of say, what does this change allow your code to do, or your application to do? And in this case, what we're doing is we're dropping SMS authentication support. So we're no longer supporting SMS authentication. That's what this change actually entails. And when it comes to reasoning as well, again, instead of the same one, we're dropping the SMS authentication support, but then we mention that this change is due to X and Y, whatever your reasons may be, and why was it necessary? Maybe there's some policy you have to comply with. Maybe whatever the reason is, it's always good to put there the reasons why you are doing such a change. And for the methodology, again, if it makes sense, you could put it there. In here, I was just imagining that maybe there's a whitelist somewhere about what auth methods some authenticator can use. And so, sure, you could add that, but take this with a grain of salt. The how is, of course, when something's much more complicated, and it's worth it to let whoever is visiting the history to have a read at how before they see the code changes. So moving on to resources and tools, this is more like things to keep in mind, maybe things to check out. So we've got conventional commits. So it's kind of an attempt to hopefully standardize the way that we write our commit messages, or what structure should they have. So this is a really common one where you've got this type, which could be something like a fix, it could be a chore, it could be a feature, or whatever you want. And so this was taken from conventional commits. You can feel free to visit there and take a look at what they have to say. Of course, these kind of things are always subjective. They're very opinionated. Each person has their own opinion, so you can be free to make your own. And then also you've got gitlint. So if you want to put gitlint somewhere in your CI pipeline, it would just check that. It will check the git commit messages, that they adhere to a certain standard. And if they don't, it will just not put it into production. And so that kind of safeguards stuff a bit when it comes to structure. Also, you can use it as a pre-commit hook. So that could also be useful. You can define this, I believe, in some kind of gitlint file in the root of the project, and you can define what you want. And finally, it's commit message template. I don't know if you know about it. I think you would, but it's built into Git. So you can also define exactly what template you want to use. So this can be changed for whatever you want. And basically, it's let's say, TXT file or whatever file that holds this kind of template, whatever you want to write there. And then you just add it to your Git configuration, either globally or to specific repositories, in case each different project has its own, let's say, template or expectations. So, and the way to add it, you can either add it globally up there, as you see, and then give a path to the file where you have the template, or you could put it directly in the config file of Git inside the repo. So, as we have 5 minutes left, first of all, I would like to thank you for your attention. This was actually the talk for the Git commit messages. Please, please, please put them at the front of your mind. Don't expand your Git log of shame. It's time for it to die. So, and I hope that all of ours died a long time ago. So I guess before the actual final thank you, since I got some time, I would like to go back to the reasoning, because I wanted to add some more things to it if I had the time. So when it comes to reasoning, there's a very important insight, especially if you're collaborating with people, that you really have to keep in mind. When you do a certain change, and you did it for a reason that you know, you did it for whatever the context is, you know it, and you did that change. And if you don't put the reason into the Git commit message or the pull request or merge request, then down the road, either you or someone else will have to go back to it. Now, we all know this, we all preach this, but it's true that sometimes I still don't find that. And that's what I'm attempting to do here, is to hopefully change that. Basically, the time invested into reverse engineering whatever code change happened 3, 4, 5 years ago, and trying to figure out why was this not done through method X, and then you go ahead and spend X amount of time to actually try that approach, and you go like, oh, now I see why they didn't do it that way. All that time could have been saved if the reasoning was at least part of that change. It was part of that label. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And so now, thank you so much for your attention once again, and I'm open to any questions if you have time. Sure. Mm-hmm. No, I'll repeat the question.
You showed the example that remove some method versus remove support for the email authentication. Or was it that one is super wrong or one is right? For me, where most of the time you make these commits and for some pull request or merge request. Those commits get cleaned after, or they get deleted or split, and there is one final commit for the whole pull request. Wouldn't it make sense to make it maybe more straightforward without the reasoning part or the overview part, and then to put it in the end of the pull request? And the second part of it is you sometimes like need how often should we commit, because sometimes deleting only the one function like the email authentication doesn't mean that we remove the support from the whole application. So should we like remove it if we want to commit only the change that if we remove the application or the method, should we just commit that and then commit other changes instead of like remove it all at once?
All right. So there were two questions. I will try to my best to paraphrase them. So the first question was something like, imagine that you are working on some PR and you will go through this iterative process and making your commits for your chunk of work. And then towards the end, when you plan on merging that, you are kind of like squashing everything up and you've got one commit message and that one to make it the refined one, if I understand correctly. So yeah, like I have nothing against that. That's ultimately what I will care about. The PR duration normally is a very short period of time, relatively speaking. So I don't mind because a lot of context is not lost there. But what I do care about, yes, is what gets into production. So I guess we do agree on that part because what would be in production is still refined. And the second question, correct me if I'm wrong, I may be forgetting a bit, but the second question was about somehow that removing, let's say, the SMS authentication from what you mentioned might not be such a bad idea to have. And if you want to remove it from, let's say stage, but not prod or certain environment versus another.
I meant it more like how often should we commit, because if we remove just one method, we want to just specify that we remove that method for now, but did not remove it for the whole.
Okay, I see. So it's about how often should we commit, and what if we removed that method but didn't remove the. If you remove the method, you will no longer be able to run that authentication because it depends on the method. So you would still need to mention that. Kind of like, yes, if you want to frame it as breaking one big change into multiple changes, then funny enough, merging might be a good idea in this case, but then you'll have to take care of each commit. Because ultimately when you do merge, you will retain the messages from each of those commits. So if those are little ones with like deleted SMS method and other stuff that makes sense, that's fine, as long as finally it's leading to a certain feature. Because I imagine that when we work and we have targets that we want to reach or certain objectives that we want to do in our work, we start those, let's say, in Jira, for example. So we have a ticket, and that ticket usually is not saying to remove a specific method. So ideally, the final refined message should reflect what would be there in whatever issue tracking system you're using. I'm sorry, we're out of time, but feel free to approach me if you want to outside, and I'll be more than happy to. So thank you so much.